Hello and welcome to Anderson Community Television. I'm Carol Donahue, your host today of At Your Service. And I'm so happy to welcome back a good friend of the program, Mr. Richard Shelley, who is the Director of Public Services here in Anderson Township. Welcome to the program, Richard.
Carol, thank you. Thank you for having me back.
Sure, you're one of my favorites. Now let me ask you, we are going to talk today about the township right-of-way. Give us the scoop on that. What is that?
The township right-of-way is the land that the public owns, if you will. I think it's confusing for residents because, you know they cut the grass in front of their house and they know they maintain they see the streets maintained, and so ownership of that sometimes becomes difficult to figure out. Who owns that land? What's the purpose of it owning the land? I even have questions of, do you pay tax on those land? Those are some of the questions that I get on a daily basis as far as, which right-of-way is in front of the yard. The purpose of the public right-of-way was at least twofold. Number one, it established a zone that the utilities could stay in and cross without having to get permission from every neighbor in order to get water service, gas service, whatever the utilities are that come to your house by your neighbor's house. So that they could not deny you that opportunity to a public utility. Of course, so the public right-of-way is set up for conveyance of utilities, and it's also set up for traveling, whether that be walking, biking, and then of course automobiles, but set up for the purpose of traffic, access and egress to your property through the public right-of-way. The confusing thing for that for a lot of people is that it really depends on what street you live on. Depends on which right-of-way is owned. For example, in Anderson Township, we have state-managed and owned and operated right-of-ways. They would be your State Route 32, State Route 52, Interstate 275, State Route 125. We have county roadways. They would be the roads that lead you to your subdivisions, the arteries, if you will, that take you off of the state routes onto the county roads.
That would be like Beechmont 125?
It would be like Ayers, Forest, Wolfangle, those type of streets, State, Hunley, Little Dry Run, all of those are county infrastructure. And then of course, once you get off of those, then you get onto township streets. And that's the part that we have responsibility for. In total, slightly over 120 miles of township inventory that we maintain. So obviously, when it snows, when the grass grows, when the things need to be maintained, we're responsible for maintaining that 120 plus mile of inventory.
Okay, now I'm being a little dense here. Now, if you are in a subdivision, it doesn't necessarily mean that this right-of-way is going to run across the front. It could run between you and your neighbor on the side, or could it run across the back?
It may not. Very good question. No, that's not dense at all. It may not always be in the front of your home. It depends on how your house is sitting on the parcel. It depends on access to the property. You may have it to the rear, to the side, whatever, but everyone's parcel has to touch a right-of-way somewhere, whether that be through an easement or an access. Sometimes those easements are on paper, but for the most part, if you have a parcel within Hamilton County, it cannot be a landlocked parcel. It has to be attached to a right-of-way. You must have access to a right-of-way in order to be a legitimate parcel.
I see. Now, what about obstructions to this right-of-way?
Obstructions to the right-of-way might include several things. It might include trees, landscaping rocks. In a lot of ways, mailboxes are an obstruction in the right-of-way. Things that creep into the right-of-way over time, it get pretty interesting at times.
Well, let me ask, these right-of-ways, is that where the cable lines are run also?
Yes, it would be where your water line, sewer, gas, underground utilities, your telephone cable, any of those natures, or they may run overhead on the poles. But either way, that land is still dedicated to the township or to the county or to the state, and that's an area that while you get to use it, technically is not your yard, but it's the public yard.
Well, that came home to roost because I looked out the window this year and saw these men chopping down all these bushes around the utility box, which we're lucky enough to have in our yard. And it looks so nice and manicured. Now it's all bare because they need access to that, and so I can understand. So those are the different types of obstructions?
Yes, and those are the different types of right-of-way that you'll deal with as a citizen. It gets confusing. I would just encourage residents that if they have any questions about which right-of-way you live on, you know, the general notion is I live in the township, therefore the township is, but that may not be the case. While you do live in the township, you know, you also live in the state of Ohio in the United States, but they're not going to come out and take care of your property either. So it's important that you are able to identify who would be responsible to maintain the public right-of-way in front of your property.
So if someone was interested in looking at their own parcel, would that show up?
It would, and depending on what street you're on, it would tell you whether that's a township street. If there are any questions, residents can call me, call the county auditor, and they would be able to let you know whose right-of-way you're on.
Because I know so many subdivisions like have setback laws where it has to be, say, 50 feet or 40 feet from the curb. So, yeah, that's interesting. So we work together to clear up a lot of these issues that could come up. So you work with the homeowner, you work if there's some dispute.
Yeah, we're the liaison, if you will, for all public utilities and the homeowner and other agencies and the homeowner. And, you know, I think so many times there's that, it's deemed that there's an adversarial role, and that's just not the case. I mean, we're here for our citizens. We're here for the public. If there are issues that need to get resolved, you know, I will not only look at it, I can address it, but, you know, I can tell you, you know, straight out if it's something we can help with or not. I'm not saying we can do all because the rules and the laws prohibit us from doing work and doing things that are not on property that we own. But if it's anything that falls in our jurisdiction, I'd be happy to tell you, you know, what's within our purview to do, what is not.
So if someone anticipated, say, building like one of those storage sheds, and there was a question in their mind, would they be building that as part of the area that you're responsible for? Should they contact before?
Good question. If you have anything that you're going to put on in the public right-of-way, you must have a permit. And anything off public right-of-way, more than likely you need a permit. So yeah, you would always want to contact the township, ask for road maintenance or zoning. Zoning would be the ones that would handle permits related to sheds, fences, and those type of structures that are going to be put into your yard.
What is the most common violation of this?
Probably just people encroaching into the right-of-way, feeling like because they cut that grass that belongs to them, or that it's connected to their yard. So with that, some people tend to take ownership of it. You know, they want to put decorative rocks or decorative landscaping or very expensive trees out in the right-of-way, and it's not only is it a hazard, but at any given time you may lose that item that you spent money on. So that's where the rub comes in sometimes, is getting people to understand that while they're able to use that land, they don't officially own it, that it's owned by the public, and that there are certain rules that govern that. And the rule book is thick, of course, but the premise of it is twofold, and that's to make sure that you have access to public and private utilities, and so that you can have access to and from your property.
I see. Now, a lot of people feel like, too, that boulevard, if you're lucky enough to have a sidewalk in your neighborhood and then you have the grassy area between the sidewalk and the street, the owner usually does not own that, correct?
Correct. They do maintain it. They cut the grass, but they do not own it. Yeah, it's usually, it's also dubbed in Public Works world, it's dubbed as a collector strip. And the reason they call it that is it's the area where the utilities tend to collect. So you'll see the lid that has a valve in it that will shut off your water main, your gas main. All of that is where the valves exist going into your property, so that those valves can be shut off at a moment's notice should there be an emergency or an issue within your property.
I see. I see. Now we're into the new year, Richard, and so I'm sure your department has some projects that they're going to begin, or maybe they've already begun them. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, you know, the unique nature of our work is that while it is a lot of repetition, it's also one that doesn't allow you a lot of downtime, if you will. Right now we're in the throes of fighting winter and snow and ice, and so we'll stay on winter operations, but we've already started our spring operations and we're planning for our summer operations. And that is to say, you know, which construction jobs are coming down the pike. Obviously with when you're planning and designing work and you're acquiring easements and you're setting up funding, all of those are a process that takes a while to accomplish. So if you're going to build it in 14, you had to start thinking about it in late 12 or early 13 just to get everything in line so that it can be built, constructed, and up for use in 14. So that's what we're up against this year. Every year we have projects that are quote unquote in the pipeline, and every year we have projects that are getting close, and every year we have projects that are in construction. Last year we finished a myriad of projects. We did a paving project, a road resurfacing, some sidewalk repairs. Obviously, Salem improvements on Salem corridor was involved with that.
Nice job.
Thank you. And the next year, then this coming year in 14, we'll see some sidewalk being constructed, some improvements made around the recycling center at the operations center. We're going to see some work hopefully start at the 5 Mile and Beachmont intersection. There'll be some work on Clough Pike, which has actually already started with the moving of the utilities. So it's going to be an active season again for us. We'll have somewhere in the neighborhood of 6 to 10 active projects.
Now, isn't there going to be some type of a closure on Clough?
Coming up, yes, it'll be related to getting the utilities and there's a large storm sewer that runs under the roadway, and the only way to get to it is to close the roadway down and do it quickly. And while it is an inconvenience,
it's necessary.
It's necessary for safety for the workers, and it's necessary for safety for the traffic and the traveling public. It's kind of that thing we weigh out, Carol. It's a balance. Do we close the road all the way down for 3 or 4 days and inconvenience people for 3 or 4 days, or do you work at it a little bit at a time over weeks at a time and inconvenience people for weeks at a time? And sometimes it makes sense to do it weeks at a time, and other times it makes sense to do it quick motion. With that Clough shutdown, it's coordinated with the schools being closed for spring break, and there's a lot of coordination, of course, that has to go into it. And then, of course, we don't let opportunity pass. While we're shut down there, we're asking ourselves, are there any other projects that make sense to do while this road is shut down? So we go ahead and jump on it, taking most of opportunity as we can. We'll jump on with other projects, trying to get those coordinated so that along that corridor, we only interrupt traffic 1 or 2 times versus many, many times.
I think most people in Anderson appreciate the fact that this is being done for the residents. So, there's a little bit of a delay,
There's a lot of the traveling public that has to forego that every day. When you go to work every day and you're in it in the morning and you're in the traffic at night, it begins to be a grind. There's no doubt about it. But
there's some alternative routes too people can take.
Yeah, while we are creatures of habit, no doubt about it, myself included, there are many alternative routes in Anderson Township which help you to get across. Are they longer? Yes, maybe. Are they as convenient? Maybe not. But the true nature of our infrastructure and roadways is there are some alternative routes. A lot of our streets, our connector routes, run parallel with each other. You can grab on a parallel route, or you can grab on a perpendicular route, head toward the river, and you're good to go once you get down there.
Exactly. Now, are we going to do some new curbs?
Oh, absolutely. We'll have a program for sidewalk and curb. I look to do somewhere around 15 streets probably throughout the neighborhoods. There'll be adjoining streets. That's the way we keep the cost of that operation down. We do adjoining streets, and that enables us to use economy of scale marketing practices and allow the contractors to mobilize into one location, do as much work as they can, and then skip out to another location. We have even customized that over the years to where we used to kind of do 2 programs at once and do paving and curb, and that's still the preferred method because you're only disrupting once. But sometimes it makes economy of scale sense to separate the 2. And when that's necessary, we do that also, the paving and the curb, because they're 2 different crafts by 2 different trades and by 2 very different specific organizations.
Well, what a difference. I know my neighborhood was done a while back, and it just looks so great when that's first done. What an improvement. Now, didn't you do the storm sewers? Was that?
Your neighborhood got the water main, new water main this year. that went down Turpin Hill and then Longclough Pike. And then, of course, some repaving came along with
Oh,
that.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Have you had a chance to see the new paving on the hill on Turpin Hills and experience
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, it's
Yes?
great.
Well, we're working our way through the township of getting all of our hills with that same similar process of treatment. It does make a difference in the inclement weather.
Oh,
It does
you
make a
bet.
difference with wet pavement. So we're working on working that porous asphalt through the sections of roadways that have hills.
I can remember a few years ago, a friend of ours was transferred here, and they moved to Turpin, and they were coming down Turpin Hills driving a little sports car and slid all the way down the hill and thought, welcome to Ohio, you know.
Indeed.
But what a difference that surface makes.
Thank you, thank you. Yes, it's something that we started years ago. We started on Bartles first. Bartles, of course, was the access way to the high school and to the elementary school, and a lot of the students got responsibility for those accidents. But we went out there and took a look at it and said, hey, you know, what if it's pavement conditions? And it turned out it was pavement conditions, and there was some issues there that we could help. So we were able to put that material down. It made a difference in the accidents numbers, and since then we've been using it on hillsides and been looking for places to integrate it a little bit each time, so that, you know, over time we get those hills that desperately need a little help, the help it needs.
So last year, did you participate in accepting bids for all these different projects?
Yes, everything we do, of course, has to go out for public bid. We advertise in the paper or on websites that allow us that opportunity, and we go out for bid. It's statutorily required that we bid for a certain length of time, and that we have public and open bid results, and then make a recommendation to the board, and then they approve. But yes, everyone is given the opportunity to do.
Because I was on the website and I happened to look and I saw some landscaping bids were on there for the green space. And not the green space, but the public area.
Yes, yes, the landscape maintenance for the year. Yes, we bid that out on an annual basis too, and probably sometime in December. Paving is one of those things where you have to, again, bid it out early in the season. So some work can occur before school's release for the summer, but so that the paving and the majority of the work will take place over the 2.5 months of summer, so that you're not interrupting the school bus service and commuters who are getting their children to school.
Well, I think our roads here in the township just look great. I mean, 5 Mile Road is great, Beechmont is looking good, and the boulevard down the center certainly helps. That's a real plus.
Thank you.
Are you planning on doing any more of that or continuing that?
I have not heard that, you know, that's a joint agreement between us and Hamilton County, that we work together with them. Interestingly enough, those boulevards always take on a certain amount of controversy because while some appreciate the upgrade in appearance, there's the battle over how do you maintain access, how do you let people free movement of traffic, how do you then pay for it going forward, you know, the maintenance of it. So, you know, those are items that get weighed very heavily, and our board does a great job at balancing that. Obviously, somewhere between not putting any in and putting them everywhere is the truth, and that's what you have to balance. You know, where they make sense, where they improve the nature of the boulevard, if you will, where they function. The one we put in recently in front of Kroger a couple years ago was related to accidents from people turning left.
Not knowing that was there,
Yeah.
not realizing. I think
And
too
so
on Markley, wasn't there an issue?
we were able to control that, and there were almost 30 accidents there turning left out of Kroger onto Beechmont. So by putting the island up and restricting that no left activity, we were in essence able to at least quell some of those accidents that occurred just by the number of traffic turning left.
Well, like you said earlier, we're creatures of habit.
We
People
really
just
are.
are used to going out and turning left.
Yes.
Like I mentioned, Markley, I think the residents there coming down, and if they wanted to make a left, the boulevard was
Yes,
wider.
we start encouraging to go the other way.
Other
And
way.
some of our access, you know, that we've worked very hard on over the last 4 or 5 years on Beechmont, you know, tying access ways in. The state is working on a program right now to, you know, shrink down some driveway sizes. You know, we're really used to some 200-foot driveways, and really driveways are never meant to be. It doesn't control traffic very well to have, you know, 100-foot of driveway across the front of a business. So, you know, you're trying to control traffic, you're trying to make it easier. And that's hard to do when you're in what we would call a retrofit situation where, you didn't have a pencil to draw this from scratch from the beginning. You're trying to fit every elevation, every driveway, every pedestrian way, every utility, every movement of traffic into a location that's already existing. So, it's a challenge. It's one that we hunt and peck at occasionally because as opportunity, again, using that opportunity word, as it presents itself, we look for ways that we can reduce those areas of congestion.
Well, I know is that plan going forward where they have the access across the back of the businesses rather than everyone pulling out directly?
Yes, yes, that's called the Anderson Access Ways, and we have a few of those connected. There's one right at BP at the 5 Mile. We have a back road into the other strip center. Target is one that we've worked on. There's a new one that opened from Festival Market area across over to Wolfangle. So now you can go from Panera over to Wolfangle, if you will, and so over to Asbury will take you to that connection. So there are things that we're working on to try to connect these businesses, again, where it makes sense, where new development is occurring, where it makes a very reasonable attempt to reduce or expedite congested traffic on Beachmont.
Well, I'm real anxious. I wish I had a crystal ball that I could see what's going to develop there, but at Wolfangle and Beachmont, where the car dealership.
We're excited about the possibilities. Obviously, the plans are still being worked on, and we don't know fully what's going in there yet or not. Kroger is a first-class organization, and I'm sure they'll come up with a first-class plan. They own the land, and a lot of it is going to be what they want and what they want to pay for, but they're certainly always a good corporate citizen. They're working with the township to develop something there that has an impact for our community.
Well, they certainly gave us a gorgeous store as our anchor there.
They did, and they did. And now that the new store that'll get added will update and take us into that next, so that facility stays on the cutting edge. And again, it's a worthy organization, and they've always been a good corporate citizen to us.
I know one time in the paper I saw a rendering of a little community with the benches and a little fountain. I don't know if that's gone astray, but I thought, oh, that would be nice.
How that final works out will yet to be seen, but yeah, some of the early renderings showed kind of a community, if you will, or a gathering place, a square they called it. So hopefully, again, all of that, as these places redevelop, as our township development guidelines was just passed recently, and again, those are guidelines, not necessarily always in stone, and it doesn't rip down existing buildings. It just says, look, if you're building in the future, we want you to take these things into consideration.
And I have to congratulate you. You kept our roads great during our snowfalls, and we have the salt to get us through the winter, correct?
We do. We have plenty of salt and plenty of calcium chloride, which can be applied to the salt when the temperature drops. But Carol,
how about beet juice?
Haven't used any beet juice yet,
okay.
but again, until we can find a better method than salt, we're going to be left with salt, because everything either gets applied to or in front of, but then you always finish with salt. So until we have a better chemical on in our repertoire than that, we're going to be left with salt.
Well, Richard, I want to thank you for all the work you do for our township. You do a great job, and it's always so nice talking to you. You just fill us in on what we need to know. Thank you for your hard work.
Thank you, Carol. It was a pleasure to be here.
And thank you all for watching Anderson Community Television. This is Carol Donahue saying, be careful, drive safely, and we'll see you next time. Hello and welcome to Anderson Community Television. I'm Carol Donahue, your host today of At Your Service. And I'm so happy to welcome back a good friend of the program, Mr. Richard Shelley, who is the Director of Public Services here in Anderson Township. Welcome to the program, Richard.
Carol, thank you. Thank you for having me back.
Sure, you're one of my favorites. Now let me ask you, we are going to talk today about the township right-of-way. Give us the scoop on that. What is that?
The township right-of-way is the land that the public owns, if you will. I think it's confusing for residents because, you know they cut the grass in front of their house and they know they maintain they see the streets maintained, and so ownership of that sometimes becomes difficult to figure out. Who owns that land? What's the purpose of it owning the land? I even have questions of, do you pay tax on those land? Those are some of the questions that I get on a daily basis as far as, which right-of-way is in front of the yard. The purpose of the public right-of-way was at least twofold. Number one, it established a zone that the utilities could stay in and cross without having to get permission from every neighbor in order to get water service, gas service, whatever the utilities are that come to your house by your neighbor's house, so that they could not deny you that opportunity